Hey there, my name is Rose. I'm the one you don't hear about in those family photos where everyone's smiling like they don't have a care in the world. I got a sister, Lucy. She's been the star of the show since the day she was born. Little Miss Perfect, right? And me, I'm basically the backstage crew in my own life. But enough about that. So, let me paint you a picture. It's the morning of my 10th birthday. I'm at the breakfast table, thinking maybe today, things will be different. Dad's munching on his toast, buried in a newspaper. Mom's fluttering around, and Lucy's there, eyes all wide and innocent. I'm waiting for some pancakes, maybe a happy birthday, you know, the usual birthday jazz. That's when Lucy, all sweet-like, starts to cry. Through her tears, she goes, "Rose pushed me, and I hurt my knee." I'm standing there, jaw on the floor. What? No, I didn't. But Dad just peers over his paper, frowning like I'd spilled his coffee, and Mom, well, she's already knee-deep in Band-Aids for Lucy. "You gotta be kinder to your sister, Rose," Mom lectures, no room for buts. But you heard your mom, Dad cuts in. And just like that, end of story. No pancakes. Lucy's whimpering turns into a sly grin the moment they're not looking. Birthday cancelled on account of sibling drama, courtesy of yours truly. Fast forward to Christmas that year. I wake up thinking maybe this time I'll score some decent loot. We're around the tree, and Lucy's tearing through her presents like a tornado. New phone and fancy threads. I find my name on a package, rip it open. Socks. And some dollar store alarm clock. I mean, come on. Later, I'm sitting on the porch, skipping rocks on the sidewalk. Grandma Joan finds me there, hands me a cup of hot cocoa like she always does when the world gives me the cold shoulder. "Thanks, Grandma," I manage, trying not to sound as grumpy as I felt. High school was no different. Lucy had the looks, the friends, I had acne and a job at Sal's Pizzeria. Worked my tail off, got those grades, and I'm thinking, this is gonna be my ticket out, right? There's this one night, senior year, college brochures spread out on the kitchen table like a bad hand of cards. Dad's fixing the sink, Mom's doing her Sudoku, and I'm about to lay my cards down, tell them about the colleges wanting to throw scholarships my way. I'm all, "There's this college outstate dash. Money's tight, Rose," Dad says straight off, not even looking up. "We're looking at community options." I shoot a look at Mom for some backup. She doesn't look up from her puzzle. "We're saving for your sister's college fund." That's when Grandma Joan steps in, real quiet. She talks to Dad first, then Mom. It's not pretty, but when she's done, she's got that check for me, pressed it into my hand like a secret handshake. "Make it count, kiddo," she says, eyes all fierce. And that was it. That check was my golden ticket, my ride far away from socks, alarm clocks, and Lucy's messes. Out of the circus, just like Joan said. As soon as my feet hit the campus of that outstate college, it was like I could finally breathe. No more Lucy, no more comparisons, no more feeling like an afterthought. I was my own person here, and that was all kinds of liberating. So yeah, I dug into those law books like they were the only things keeping me grounded. I was at the library more than I was at my own dorm room. Came to know every coffee stain on those tables like they were my personal constellation of caffeine. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Money was tight. I remember this one time at the campus grocery store, counting coins from my pocket for a week's worth of ramen. The cashier was tapping her nails, looking bored out of her mind. "You gonna pay or what?" she drawled, popping her gum. I was a dime short. A freaking dime. "Hold on," I mumbled, searching my pockets for a coin that wasn't there. That's when this guy behind me sighed loudly and threw a quarter on the counter. "Here, keep the change," he grunted. Embarrassing? Yeah, you bet. But it was also the day I met Mike, who turned out to be a fellow law student and a bit of a smartass. A friend, something I hadn't had a lot of. In the grind between classes and part-time jobs, Mike and I stuck together. He was as plain-spoken as they come, didn't have patience for show-offs or slackers. Wasn't the type to sugarcoat feedback on my mock trial performances either. "You gotta stop sounding like you're asking permission to be fierce," he'd say. "You know this stuff, Rose. Act like it." And I took that to heart. By the time I was sitting for the bar exam, I felt like I was carving my own path, laying down the law, you know? I wasn't Rose, Lucy's sister. I was just Rose, soon to be Rose, ESQ. At the firm, things were different. I had to prove myself again, but this time it was on my own terms. The partners, they were a mixed bag, some welcoming, some wary of the new blood. I remember being cornered by one of the senior partners, Bill, during my first week. "So, you're Joan's granddaughter," he stated more than asked, eyebrows up like he discovered gold. "Yeah, how'd you know?" I was wary, keeping my answers short and my guard up. Bill chuckled. "Joan and I fought in the same trenches once. She mailed me your resume. Said you had grit." I'd have groaned if it didn't feel like a small victory. Grandma Joan, still my one-woman fan club. In that firm, I made it known I wasn't there to ride anyone's coattails. I worked cases like they were puzzles only I could solve. In the courtroom, it was another world. I wasn't the kid sister or the overlooked daughter. I was fierce. Mike's words came back to me, about not asking for permission. "If the glove doesn't fit," I'd say, cutting through the noise, "then you must acquit." Simple, easy, nothing too fancy, to the point. It worked. So yeah, I escaped. From family expectations, from always being second best. I made it on my own terms. And it felt like freedom, hard, exhausting, but undeniably mine. It all started at the courthouse steps where I bumped into Tom, literally. Papers and apologies flying everywhere. He was there to support his buddy. I was on my first case. We laughed it off, grabbed coffee, and it turned out we could talk for hours. He was a contractor, not bothered by my legal jargon, just easygoing and genuine. Before I knew it, we were inseparable. When we decided to get married, the plan was no fuss, just us and the people we loved, sharing a good time. That plan didn't stand a chance once my family entered the picture. "It's nice," Mom would say, dabbing the corner of her eye, but her tone adding a silent "but." Dad just patted my shoulder, a silent solidarity that didn't quite warm me. And Lucy? She had to make an entrance, even if it wasn't her day. She arrived in a dress so flashy you'd think she was the one getting married. But I bit my tongue. It was my wedding day, and I wasn't gonna let her rain on my parade. At least that was the plan. Tom, he was a champ about it. Meeting my sister, he just gave me that look. Wow, she doesn't hold back, does she? I wanted to bury my head in my bouquet. You have no idea. The guests started piling in, and for a moment, it looked like it might actually be a good day. That's when Lucy decided she wasn't getting enough attention. "You're just going to ignore me? On your wedding day?" She was almost shrieking, eyes darting around hoping someone would sympathize with her. I took a deep breath, counted to 5 in my head. I was done being the peacemaker. "Lucy, not today. Please." She huffed, tossing her hair. "Whatever. I give it a year anyway." Mom shot me a warning glance, like it was my job to fix it. As usual. But something in me snapped. This was my day. Mine and Tom's. I wasn't going to let Lucy or anyone else mess with that. "Get out," I repeated, and my voice didn't even shake. Lucy looked at me with wide eyes, kind of like she did when we were kids and I'd finally stand up to her nonsense. "What did you just say?" "I'm done with your drama. This is my wedding, and you're not gonna spoil it." She sputtered, red in the face now. "But I'm family." "So? Family doesn't pull this kind of crap, Lucy. Not today. Not at my wedding." Mom tried to intervene. "Rose, don't do this, she's just..." I cut her off. "No, Mom. Enough is enough. Lucy's face was a storm cloud, and she looked ready to argue. But this time she didn't. Maybe it was the way I stood, maybe it was Tom's hand in mine, or maybe it was the crowd of guests watching the drama unfold. For once, Lucy didn't have a comeback. She just turned and strutted out, heels clicking against the pavement like a judge banging a gavel. The rest of the day went by in a blur. I said, I do, we kissed, and I've never felt so much like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not Lucy's shadow, not my parents' second choice, but Rose. Just Rose. And that was more than enough. Okay, so get this, a month in, post-wedding drama, and Lucy pulls a Houdini. Total ghost town where she used to be, right? Scoots out of town leaving behind nothing but a crummy note. And guess who's the villain in her sob story? Yup, yours truly. Turns out her exit strategy includes playing the blame game, and I'm it. Her note? Classic Lucy, painting her runaway act with a bunch of bull about how I've done her wrong. Like she's the fragile flower and I'm the big bad wolf. At the next family dinner, the air's so thick with tension you could cut it with a knife. Mom's at the head of the table, flinging accusatory glances my way like she's dealing cards at a high-stakes poker game. Rose, how could you let it come to this? She starts, and I can feel the showdown brewing. Dunno, Mom. Maybe 'cause I ain't the warden in Lucy's personal prison, I shoot back. I'm not in the mood for a guilt trip, that's for sure. Dad chimes in, voice laced with that don't rock the boat tone. Your sister thinks you never gave her a break. That's serious. Are you kidding me? I can feel my temper flaring, words hot on my tongue. After everything, you're gonna take her side? Based on what, a damn piece of paper? That's when Granny, sweet Granny, who always had my back, pipes up with a voice like thunder. Rose. Your sister's out there alone, scared, and it's your doing. You too, Granny? I couldn't believe my ears. Since when do you buy this load of crap? Her eyes got all misty. Your ways pushed her to it, Rose. You're not innocent. That was a gut punch. I've been looking out for her since diapers, and this is the thanks I get? The old lady was on a roll though. No excuses, girl. You've got a heart, use it. The whole clash was absurd. There we were, a family tearing into each other over Lucy's concocted tale. Even Granny, who'd never once doubted me, was singing a different tune, and boy, did it sting. I stormed out of there, the room thick with unsaid things. Granny's betrayal cut deep, but what cut deeper was knowing I'd stood up for myself. I was done being anybody's villain, especially not in Lucy's crafty escape act. If they wanted to believe her over me, that was on them. Tom's been acting off, real off. All those late nights at the office, trips out of town every other week, big projects he can't talk about. Yeah, right. Man's as subtle as a brick through a window. And then, like fate's trying to tell me something, I catch a glimpse of something red peeking out from his jacket pocket while I'm on laundry duty. A receipt for some fancy women's shop. No way was that for me. I didn't confront him. What's the point when you know you'll get nothing but half-truths topped with lies? I decided I'd do it the smart way, let someone else do the digging. Yeah, I called up a private eye, got him tasked on tailing Tom, seeing what really goes down when he's working overtime. Jimmy's the name of the PI, seems like he's been in the game long enough to see everything twice. Just want the straight shot, I told him, no chasing ghosts. He gave me a nod that said as clear as day, I got this. So I wait. Days feel like weeks when you're waiting for a bomb to drop. I keep things normal at home, or make a damn good show of it. Every time Tom tells me he's got to work late again, I nod, smile, and say something like, don't work too hard, babe. One night, he's at it again. Gotta finish up some things at the office, you know how it is. I shrug, playing it cool on the outside, but inside, my mind's racing. Sure, Tom. Don't forget to eat something. Wouldn't want you wasting away. He gives me a peck on the cheek and he's out the door, and I'm left feeling like I'm on some warped episode of a TV show where the wife's the last to know. I try focusing on a book, some cooking show, but who am I kidding? My head's not in it. Instead, I'm thinking about that receipt. That damn piece of paper that feels like it's burning a hole through the fabric of our little suburban life. Finally, I get a text. Not from Tom, but from Jimmy. My stomach drops when I see his name flash up on my phone. I don't open it. Not yet. Can't bring myself to. Whatever's in that message, it's gonna turn my world upside down. Instead, I pour myself a glass of wine, let the cool liquid settle my nerves. They say ignorance is bliss, but I passed that exit miles back. I have to look. I pick up the phone, thumb hovering over the screen, and then I press. But Jimmy's text isn't the full picture. It's just to say he's on the case, got some leads. We'll know more soon, he writes. That's it, then. No turning back now. Tom's little secrets are on borrowed time, and when the truth comes out, I'll be ready. There's something liberating about it, knowing that I'm no longer in the dark, playing the doting wife, smiling while something rotten's eating away at my marriage. Grandma Joan and I hadn't been seeing eye to eye recently, but the envelope stuffed with the PI's evidence was burning a hole in my bag and my conscience. Deep down, I knew she was the only one who could give me the straight talk I needed without sugarcoating the jagged pill I was about to swallow. I knocked on the door, and it swung open, revealing Grandma Joan with her arms folded, looking as staunch as ever. "Took you long enough," she said, without a hello. I let out a breath that I had been holding in longer than I realized. "Yeah, well, I'm here now." We sat down at the kitchen table, the same one we'd shared more Sunday dinners at than I could count. But today, it wasn't a warm roast that lay between us, but a file filled with photos and texts. "I've got something to say," I started, but she cut me off with a sharp wave of her hand. "Save it," she said. "I can guess why you're here, and I don't need an apology." I narrowed my eyes, ready for a quarrel, but her face softened. "What's done is done. Let's just hear what you've got." So, I spilled it, all of it. The late nights Tom pulled, the lies that didn't add up. "Do you have proof?" she asked, eyes piercing through me like she could see the answers scribbled across my heart. "It's all here," I said, tapping the envelope. She reached out and I handed it over, but she didn't open it. Instead, she looked me straight in the eyes. "You know this doesn't change anything between us, right? Family is family." That's when it hit me. Whatever had come between us, whatever words we'd exchanged that we couldn't take back, none of it mattered now. Not with this storm on the horizon. "You're right," I answered. "It doesn't change a thing. I still need you, Grandma." "Good," she grinned, but there was a seriousness in her eyes that wasn't usually there. "Because I need you too. And let me tell you, whatever's in that envelope," she tapped it and slid it back towards me, "it doesn't define who you are or what you're worth." We sat there for a while, not saying much, just being together. It felt like the air had cleared. The storm clouds were still there, but now, I wasn't going to weather them alone. Later, when I went to leave, Grandma Joan gave me a tight squeeze. "You call me, you hear? Day or night. We'll figure this out." I pulled back and looked at her. "I will. And thanks, Grandma, for everything." As I walked away, the envelope heavy in my bag, I felt lighter somehow. My steps were more certain, my spine straighter. Whatever Tom was up to, whatever the PI had uncovered, I was ready to face it. With my grandma at my back, I felt like I could face just about anything. A month had whipped by and there we were, gathered in the stiff parlor of Grandma's house, me, Mom, Dad, and my husband, Tom. An odd quiet hung in the air as the lawyer got ready to dish out the details of the will. Just the family scene you'd expect, except for the empty spot where Grandma used to be. And then, like out of some crappy soap opera, in prances my sister, Lucy, all dolled up and smirking like she's just won the jackpot on a scratch card. Mom and Dad, tears in their eyes, fuss over her like she's just returned from war, not the two-bit runaway act she'd pulled. I stayed put, my hands clenched into fists under the table. I wasn't about to give her my piece yet. She swans up to Tom, bold as brass, and plants one on him. My Tom. As if that wasn't gag-worthy enough, she starts spouting off this garbage about how she'd cooked up this whole mess. I made it all happen that Grandma would bequeath her property to me, not to the villainous Rose. Lucy gloats, thumbing at Grandma's portrait with a grin that made my blood boil. And I also took her husband away from Rose. Mom's sobbing, Dad's face is ghost white, and there's Tom, cheek to cheek with the snake, both of them looking like they've got the secret to the universe. We have the last laugh, he says, voice slippery with that grin plastered all over his face. The room's buzzing with their confidence, them thinking they've got it all sewn up. Grandma's gone, and in their mind, her house, her savings, all her bits and bobs were theirs for the taking. They didn't see me smile. The lawyer, a guy with less flair than a wet match, starts talking. So, as per Mrs. Joan Holloway's last will and testament, the lawyer drones, and here it comes, the entirety of her estate, her home, her financial assets, and her personal effects are to be left to. I already see Lucy reaching out, like she could already touch the velvet of Grandma's antique chairs. Her granddaughter, Rose Marie Kendrick, provided. Lucy's hand hangs there, midair, and the smirks melt off her and Tom's faces faster than ice cream in July. She agrees to use these assets for the continuation of the local community garden which Mrs. Holloway was fond of. The lawyer finishes with no fanfare. The silence is thick enough to cut. Mom and Dad look between me and Lucy, their tears dry now, replaced with something else. Confusion? Betrayal? Both? Finally, I break the quiet. Well, I guess that's that, huh? Lucy's mouth zips shut, all tight lines, and Tom, he's paler than a ghost, his eyes not meeting anyone's. You wouldn't believe the circus that unfolded after the will reading. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing, distant relatives suddenly remembering my name. But me? I kept it tight. It wasn't about the drama, it was about staying 3 steps ahead. So, what's the plan now, Rose? Tom asked with that rat-like twitch of his lip, trying to sound all sweet and concerned. We were standing in Grandma's kitchen, a place where I'd shucked more corn than anyone's business. I leaned back against the counter, feeling the cool marble against my spine. Well, Tommy boy, first up, I'm changing the locks. His eyes darted like he'd been zapped. But, what about us? He stammered, like he hadn't been caught red-handed. I chuckled, low and steady. Us? Oh, darling, us jumped ship the moment you cozy up to my sis, just to get a piece of the pie. There were papers in my handbag, crisp and just waiting for his signature. Divorce papers, my ticket out of this mess. The PI snaps, the texts, the late-night calls. I had it all. My hand was stacked, and they didn't even know we were playing cards. Lucy's eyes flicked between us, sensing the shift in the air. She was like a cat that got caught sneaking a paw into the fishbowl. You can't kick him out. We have rights. Rights? I arched an eyebrow, amused at her guts. Sweetheart, after what I found out, the only right you're gonna need is the right to a good lawyer. Tom's face was pale, eyes darting to the door, probably scheming his next escape. But there was nowhere for him to run. Not this time. I felt the weight of the house keys in my pocket, the grooves grounding me. This was more than just a will, it was Grandma speaking from beyond, telling me to tidy up the trash that clung to her legacy. I walked over to Tom and handed him the papers. Sign these, and we can at least pretend you walked away with a shred of dignity. He snatched them up, his hands shaking like he was in a snowstorm without a coat. His signature scribbled across the page was the scribble of a defeated man. Lucy was seething. You think you've won? She hissed, her voice a strained whisper. I smiled, genuine and clear. Honey, this ain't about winning. This is checkmate. You played dirty, and you lost. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a garden to tend to and a life to live. With that, I left them there, in the dust of their greed, in the kitchen filled with memories of sugar cookies and laughter, a kitchen that would soon echo with new stories. No more whys, no regrets, just me, my begonias, and a fresh start.
Zara, you need to see this. It's Jackson. He's not who you think he is, my niece Mia said, her voice shaking as she showed me a photo on her phone. I stared in disbelief at the image. A candid shot of my husband Jackson with his arm around a tall blonde woman, laughing together at the airport. My stomach dropped. What? This can't be real, I said, my voice hollow. I snapped it yesterday when I was picking up my friend from her flight. I knew if I didn't show you, you'd never believe me, Aunt Zara, Mia replied. I felt sick with dread but tried to remain calm. Did you talk to him? Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Mia shook her head. He didn't see me, but from how cozy they looked, I don't think it was just a friend. My mind reeled. Jackson and I had been married for 12 years. Was he really cheating on me? That night at dinner, I cautiously brought it up. Mia said she saw you with another woman at the airport yesterday, I began. Jackson laughed loudly, making me jump. Mia's got an active imagination, doesn't she? I picked up a client visiting from Dallas to show her a property. That's all. He scoffed. I searched his face for any hint of deception, but found none. Still, over the next few weeks, doubts plagued me. Jackson worked later, went on mysterious trips, and spent more time texting. One day, acting on impulse, I checked his pockets while doing laundry. In his crumpled pants was a hotel keycard and receipt for a suite at the Sebastian, downtown's most lavish hotel. Fueled by adrenaline, I grabbed my car keys. Time to learn the truth. I arrived at the hotel, hands trembling, and took the elevator to the 5th-floor suite. As I raised my hand to knock, the door swung open, and there was Jackson, half-dressed with the same blonde from Mia's photo. Cassidy, I thought you were just... Jackson froze mid-sentence when he saw me. Zara! He cried. What are you doing here? My body shook with rage and anguish. I was right not to trust you, I choked out. The blonde, Cassidy, slunk out, avoiding eye contact. Jackson scrambled for his shirt. Zara, I can explain. Don't bother, I said coldly. Without another word, I turned and strode rapidly toward the elevators, tears stinging my eyes. His web of lies had finally unraveled. My husband was not the man I thought I knew at all. I drove aimlessly for hours, my mind racing. How long had Jackson's affair been going on? And how had I never noticed? When I finally returned home, Jackson was waiting on the porch. Thank God, I was so worried, he said, rushing toward me. I backed away, repulsed. Don't come near me, you liar, I said sharply. Jackson's facade crumbled. Baby, I messed up, okay? I didn't mean for it to happen. Save it, I snarled. I saw you with her at the hotel. Her name's Cassidy, right? Jackson paled. Cassidy? She doesn't mean anything to me, Zara. It was just a stupid fling. I fought the urge to slap him. A fling? We're married. How long has this been going on? He turned his gaze downward. I don't know. A few months, maybe? Months, I cried. Blinding fury washed over me. Without thinking, I grabbed my suitcase from the front closet and started throwing clothes inside. Whoa, take it easy, Jackson said, eyes wide. Where are you going? I'm leaving. Obviously, I scoffed bitterly. I'll be at my sister's. Panic flashed across Jackson's face. He blocked my path to the door. Be reasonable, Zara. You don't have to leave. I pushed past him, seething. I won't stay under the same roof as a lying, cheating snake. Jackson chased me to my car. I said I was sorry. I'll end things with Cassidy, I swear. We can get counseling, move past this. I whirled around to face him one last time, tears stinging my eyes. The man I loved would never betray me like this. I don't know who you are anymore. Jackson, we're done. I peeled out of the driveway just as the tears began to fall, leaving Jackson helplessly shouting after me. My heart ached with grief and bitterness, but I refused to let him see me crumble. He wasn't worthy of my tears. Now I knew the painful truth about the stranger Jackson had become. It was time to pick myself back up. I spent the next few days at my sister Ivy's apartment trying to process it all. But my raging mind wouldn't rest. I had to know more, like how Jackson financed his sordid affair when we struggled to save money every month. I met my friend AJ, a tech wizard, for lunch. Can you track someone's credit card purchases without them knowing? I asked. His eyes widened. On the dark web, sure. This about Jackson? I nodded, steeling my nerves. Later, AJ sent me a list of expensive hotel charges over the past 4 months and jewelry purchases. Must be for his mistress, AJ noted. The reality sunk like a stone in my gut. Jackson hadn't just cheated, He'd spent a fortune on Cassidy behind my back. Fury simmered inside me. It was time to uncover the extent of my husband's betrayal. If he thought he could get away with it, he was dead wrong. A few days later, I bought hair dye, preppy clothes, and blue contact lenses, the perfect disguise to follow Jackson unnoticed. I told Ivy I needed to work, but really, I was parked outside Jackson's office, spying from a rental car. At noon, Jackson finally emerged, stopping at the florist. To my disgust, he exited carrying a massive bouquet of roses. He continued downtown, ducking into the Sebastian, the same hotel where I'd caught him with Cassidy. This time, instead of barging into their suite, I discreetly trailed Jackson to the bar where Cassidy waited in a slinky dress that likely cost more than my car. Jackson kissed her, grinning. My blood boiled. Just then, Jackson's phone rang. His face fell. "It's the hospital," he told Cassidy. "Let me take this outside." As Jackson hurried out, I seized the chance, sliding onto the bar stool beside Cassidy. She glanced at me, puzzled. "I know what you're doing with my husband," I said fiercely. Cassidy recoiled. "Excuse me? I don't even know you." "I'm Zara, Jackson's wife," I said coldly. Cassidy paled, speechless. Before she could respond, Jackson returned, ashen-faced. His eyes darted wildly between us. "Zara?" he croaked. "There's been an accident. My dad." He wavered on his feet. My anger evaporated, replaced by shock. Despite everything, I still cared for him once. I took his arm gently. "Come on," I said quietly. "Let's get you to the hospital." Cassidy backed away wordlessly into the crowd as I led Jackson outside, holding back my whirlwind of accusations, for now. At the hospital, Jackson collapsed into a chair, head in hands. "The nurse said Dad's car was hit by a drunk driver. He's in surgery now," Jackson choked out. My heart ached for him. I clasped his shoulder gently. "He'll pull through. Your dad's resilient." Jackson nodded wordlessly. Hours passed with no update. When the nurse finally appeared, her somber expression said it all. Jackson's dad hadn't made it. Jackson dissolved, sobbing uncontrollably. I held him close, letting his tears soak into my shirt. Despite Jackson's ghastly choices, he was still family. Over the next few days, as funeral arrangements were made, I supported Jackson quietly behind the scenes, putting my simmering fury on hold. The day of the funeral came, a small, mournful affair. After the burial, I drove Jackson back to his place so he could change for the wake. But when we pulled up, police swarmed the sidewalk. "What happened?" Jackson asked a cop. "Nasty wreck earlier. Speeding vehicle crashed into that tree. 2 people were critically injured." Dread filled my stomach. As the ambulance pulled away, I spotted a flash of blonde hair on the stretcher. Cassidy. Jackson blanched. He must have realized, too. We followed the police to the hospital and learned Cassidy had been driving Jackson's beloved vintage Mercedes, with Jackson in the passenger seat when she lost control. The officer shook his head. Witnesses said she raced through 2 red lights before crashing. We suspect drunk driving. The news stunned me. Jackson could have died cheating on me with Cassidy. Overwhelmed, I stepped aside to compose myself. A nurse approached with an evidence bag containing Jackson's damaged cell phone cracked from the wreck. "We can hold his personal effects until he's released," she offered gently. On impulse, I took the phone. "I'll handle it, thanks," I murmured. Once Jackson stabilized, they'd transfer him to a regular room. I had time to access his phone, to understand the full picture. I met my friend Ajay at his repair shop and handed him the phone. "Any chance you can get inside this to access text messages and photos?" "Shouldn't be an issue," Ajay said. Within the hour, he'd downloaded the data onto a disk. "I don't know what you're looking for, but seems like this guy's up to no good," Ajay warned. My hands trembled, imagining what secrets the disk held. "That's what I'm afraid of," I said gravely. Alone at home, I loaded the disk on my laptop with trembling hands. Photo after sorted photo filled the screen. Jackson and Cassidy entwined, wearing nothing. Receipts and texts arranging their trysts covered months. Even worse, screenshots showed Jackson transferring money from my personal account into his, thousands of dollars gone. I squeezed my eyes shut, tasting bile. The man I'd loved for 12 years had stolen my money to finance his affair, deceiving me at every turn. It was time to make Jackson face the truth and pay the price for his callous betrayal. Armed with the incriminating data from Jackson's phone, I set up a meeting with my lawyer, Carlos. He scanned through the evidence, eyebrows rising. "This is quite serious," Carlos said. Illicit transfers from your personal account without permission constitutes fraud and theft. Combined with the affair, you have solid grounds for divorce. My chest tightened. After 12 years together, divorcing Jackson felt unreal. Let's focus first on freezing your joint accounts before he empties them, Carlos continued. I'll also file a temporary restraining order. When he's discharged, legally he cannot come near you or the home you share. I nodded, steeling my nerves. The cold machinations now seemed necessary. 2 days later, I sat rigidly in Carlos's tight office as he made the call, confronting Jackson over speakerphone. Mr. Kent, I represent your wife, Zara. We have evidence here of fraud and infidelity. As of now, your joint accounts are frozen. You're also legally prohibited from approaching Miss Kent or your shared residence per the temporary restraining order issued this morning. The line went silent. Finally, Jackson sputtered in rage. Who the hell do you think you are? You can't just lock me out. Carlos glanced at me. The court order says otherwise, Mr. Kent. Will you comply, or shall I have officers waiting at your discharge? You betch, Jackson snarled. You won't get away with this, Zara. That's my house, too. I flinched but kept my tone cool. I'm done being your personal ATM, Jackson. Consider this the consequence of your actions. The call ended explosively, with Jackson hurling threats until nurses hauled him away. Shaken, I retreated home, now owned solely by me. For days, tension knotted my stomach as I awaited Jackson's next move. A week later, the doorbell rang. My eyes widened in alarm until I saw Jackson's sister Harper on the video feed. I swung the door open. Harper, is everything okay? She shifted on her feet. Hey, Zara, do you have a minute? I waved her in, puzzled. Since the funeral, I hadn't seen Harper or the rest of Jackson's family. Harper sat down, not meeting my eyes. I heard about the restraining order and Jackson cleaning out your accounts. My shoulders slumped as I sank down beside her. You probably think I'm just bitter and crazy, but he was cheating on me for months, Harper, and stealing money to fund his lifestyle with some woman named Cassidy. Harper nodded slowly. I know, I didn't at first, but I overheard Jackson on the phone with Cassidy. The things he said, the way he spoke to her. She shuddered. He was cruel, degrading. I realized I didn't know my own brother anymore. Tears shone in Harper's eyes. My heart twisted in empathy. Betrayal by family cut especially deep. Harper grasped my hand fiercely. You did the right thing escaping from him, Zara. What he did was unforgivable, and I want to help you make sure he doesn't get away with it. Relief washed over me. I wasn't alone anymore in this fight. Harper's solidarity awakened a powerful sense of vindication. With the truth exposed, Jackson would finally reap the misery he'd sown, starting with losing his most precious relationships, the foundation of his deceitful life. In the weeks following my confrontation with Jackson, I leaned heavily on Harper's support. We met often for coffee or wine, hashing out my next moves. Have you decided whether you'll meet him in court or settle outside? Harper asked one evening. I swirled the wine in my glass. Jackson's too volatile for meetings. I'll let the judge force him to pay up. Harper nodded firmly. Good. He deserves the public shame. I sighed. My lawyer says proving the affair gives us leverage for maximum restitution, but rehashing all the sordid details. I shook my head, pained. Harper clasped my hand. You're so much stronger than Jackson gives you credit for, Zara. Don't worry, I'll be right by your side when you face him in court. Her steadfast solidarity bolstered me. With Harper at my side, I could withstand Jackson's wrath long enough to expose his deceit in court. Financial restitution seemed hollow compared to what I'd lost, but hitting Jackson where it hurt most was the only path to justice. A few days before our hearing, Jackson shocked us both by showing up unannounced at my door, ignoring the restraining order. Zara, please, can we talk about this? He implored, clutching wilted flowers. Before I could react, Harper appeared behind me. Get off this property before I call the police, Jackson, she threatened. Jackson's face darkened. Stay out of this, Harper. This is between me and my wife. The possessive way he said my wife made my skin crawl. Harper stepped forward furiously. Former wife, because you decided to lie and steal instead of honoring your vows. I always defended you, Jackson, but now you disgust me. Jackson flushed angrily. You know nothing, Harper. This witch turned my whole family against me. He jabbed his finger at me. My fury boiled over. You did this to yourself, Jackson. Now get out before the cops drag you out. With a menacing glare, Jackson stormed off. I sagged in relief against Harper. Tomorrow, come hell or high water, my ex would get exactly what he deserved. At the courthouse, Harper squeezed my shoulder as we took our seats. "I'm right here with you," she murmured. Across the aisle, Jackson sat alone, his eyes swollen and hair disheveled. For an instant, pity tempered my simmering vitriol. Then I remembered the trauma his lies inflicted, and my resolve strengthened. When the judge called my name, I strode forward steadily. I would walk out of here vindicated and finally free from Jackson's poisonous hold. "Please describe for the court the events that led to today's hearing," the judge prompted gently. I steadied myself. "I learned my husband Jackson was having an affair. When I confronted him, he promised to end things, but he continued sneaking around behind my back." I proceeded to calmly detail Jackson's lies and deceit over months, culminating in stealing my money to fund his lavish outings with his mistress Cassidy. Jackson's lawyer questioned me vigorously, but faltered when I presented the evidence from Jackson's phone. The judge considered me soberly. "This deception went on at length. Why stay with a serial philanderer and fraud?" I stood taller. "Because I loved him once, deeply. I'm here now because his actions forced me to protect myself." The judge nodded and turned to Jackson. "Mr. Kent, how do you plead to these allegations of infidelity, fraud, and theft?" Jackson burst out of his chair. "It's bull, all of it. She's making me out to be a monster over one mistake." He pointed at me, hand shaking. Murmurs filled the courtroom. The judge pounded his gavel sharply. "That's enough, Mr. Kent. Maintain composure or I'll hold you in contempt." Jackson slowly sat but glared at me malevolently. I glared back, undaunted. After a painfully long debate, the judge rendered his verdict in my favor. "The evidence presented confirms Mr. Kent violated marital trust through chronic infidelity and fraud. As restitution, this court orders an equitable division of assets, including one-time alimony payment to Ms. Zara Kent." He banged the gavel finality. I hugged Harper tightly in dizzy relief. It was over. I was free. At the plaintiff's table, Jackson stood slowly regarding me with icy calmness. "Congratulations, Zara. You won," he said cuttingly. "I hope destroying my life was worth it." Adrenaline coursed through me. I didn't destroy anything. I just revealed the truth, something you could never face. I held his gaze unflinchingly. "We're over, Jackson. This was your doing." His lips curled in a snarl. "You'll regret this, Zara," he spat venomously. Before the bailiffs could react, he stormed out. I stood frozen, pulse thrumming. Harper gripped my shoulder. "Don't let him scare you. His threats are just pathetic attempts at control," she said. "He's the one who needs to move on now." I nodded, shaking off my unease. She was right. Jackson no longer had any hold over me. And once his family and Cassidy realized the truth too, he'd truly be left with nothing. A fitting outcome for his cruelty. In the months following the trial, I finally felt I could breathe again. Jackson vanished from my life just as completely as our marriage had. Only Harper provided glimpses of his downward spiral. His girlfriend Cassidy left him when she found out about the money he owes you, Harper revealed over lunch one day. And without her bankrolling his lifestyle, he's scrambling. I shook my head. After all the warnings about her, now he's alone and struggling? Talk about karma. Harper smiled ruefully. Also, quite the scandal for his career. Clients dropped him when word of the lawsuits got around. While I took no pleasure in Jackson's misery, it was clear he deserved it. And the alimony checks he resentfully sent each month ensured I could rebuild my life. On my birthday a few months later, Harper stopped by with champagne and news. "Cheers to your fresh start," we clinked glasses. "I actually have an update on Jackson's current crash and burn," she added. I raised an eyebrow. His ruined career and relationships were already karmic payback. "So get this," Harper continued, leaning in furtively. "Jackson put his house on the market. He's so desperate for cash, he sold it way under value." My eyes widened. "His dream house that he made me sacrifice for?" "Geez." Almost sheepishly, Harper went on. "Well, funny you should mention sacrifice, because the buyer was Ray Hernandez." I nearly choked on my champagne. "Ray? My ex that Jackson always hated?" Harper nodded, grinning. "Yep, Ray seized the chance to stick it to Jackson, and Jackson was apparently seething, but financial hands were tied." The irony was so absurd I burst out laughing. Jackson's precious house ending up with his nemesis Ray? You really couldn't make this stuff up. In his greed and dishonesty, Jackson had sabotaged everything stable in his life. Now all that remained was facing the music alone, and music never sounded sweeter. To good riddance, Harper cheered, raising her glass again triumphantly. The relief I'd yearned for was finally here, freedom from Jackson's toxicity and lies. His bitterness over losing our old house to my ex was just icing on the cake of karma, now enjoying her sweet revenge. And I planned to relish every bite.